And welcome to the Krueg Show. We're off and running on a Thursday. Hope everybody's having a great day. The late in June, Thursday, June the 29th, 9:18 on the West Coast, a little bit afternoon on the East Coast. Thanks for joining us. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. And joining us on the show today is Al Sacco, I've been on his show before. He does a podcast on the 49ers on the Odyssey app. You can catch that. And Al joins us on the Krueg Show to talk a little 49ers, look ahead to training camp. Al, how are you, man? Good to see you.
Good to see you, Larry. I'm doing well. This is the time of the year where it feels like football is close, but it's still kind of yet so far away. But about a month, we'll be in training camp, and I can't wait, man. I can't wait.
Yeah, no, seriously. And it can't get here fast enough. And this is the kind of the dead time between, OTAs and mini camp and training camp. And so I always kind of wonder and question the stories that come out on the 49ers in the month of June, because, exactly what are we talking about? They haven't hit the field for a week or two. They're not going to hit the field for a few more weeks. And really, the coaches are oftentimes vacationing. This is the time the players, the rookie players are training. Some of the other players are doing a lot of training as well, but they're training on their own. A lot of times they're not in the facility. There's not a lot of news, but I thought this would be a good time to have you on, kind of a calm before the storm, to see if you put any credence behind any of these stories coming out about the quarterbacks and the depth chart and who sits where. It is been broadcast around the country the last few days about where the national insiders have the 49er depth chart sitting. I think most people have Brock Purdy number one, but I kind of assumed that it would be Trey Lance number two, and yet Albert Breer, Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, they've all kind of made different statements and different commentary that all seem to have the same theme, which is that Trey Lance is so raw and he's only played 1 year of ball since high school. And that even though he's been in this offense longer than any other quarterback on the team, that, because of that, raw nature of his game and because of that inexperience, that he may actually enter training camp as the third quarterback on the depth chart. What do you believe? What do you not believe? What's your guess on how this is actually going to go?
I'm one of those guys who tries just to see what's happening in front of me and be a realist about it. And when you look at what the Niners did in free agency, they signed Sam Darnold on like day one. So he was a priority for them. So they brought him in, I think, knowing that they weren't sure on Purdy, but also they weren't sure on Lance. And the whole thing with Lance with me, Larry, is it's like a situation we've never seen before. So you have this team that's ready to win now, right? The Niners, their Super Bowl window was ready to win now, and they were concerned about Jimmy's health. So they're going after Matthew Stafford. He goes to the Rams. They're going after Deshaun Watson. He has all the legal troubles. And then it seems like after that happened, they sort of pivot and trade up in the draft. Did they want Mac Jones? I don't know. But they end up taking one of the greenest and least experienced quarterbacks we've ever seen come out. Like, this dude barely played. And when he did play, I was looking at his attempts, Larry. In college, he had 16 attempts or less 8 times. 8. He had games where he threw the ball like 7 times. 18 to 23 attempts 7 times, and he only threw the ball more than 30 times twice in college. So you bring in this guy who is completely green to a team that's ready to win now, when really he was a project pick. So first year he comes in and he hurts his finger in that preseason game, and that did affect him the whole season. Hurts his knee in the game that he played against the Cardinals. So he was pretty banged up, but it looked like he wasn't ready. Then you say, okay, 2022, we're just going to hand the reins over to him and say, if we have to take some steps back early to eventually take steps forward, they were ready to do that. He gets hurt in game number 2. You have to go back to Jimmy. So now they're in a situation where you look at the window of this team. I don't think it's more than 2 years with this core. That doesn't mean they can't replenish some positions and keep it going, but I don't think it's more than 2 years. George Kittle is not going to play 5 years at this level at his age. Trent Williams only has another year or 2 left. Eric Armstead isn't going to be there. You may have to choose between Debo and Ayuk. Christian McCaffrey's in his late 20s. He may only have a couple years left in this. So now I think the Niners are saying, like, look, we don't have time. We have to capitalize on this now. And Brock Purdy came in, was fantastic, averaged over 30 points a game. We know we can win with him. And that's where we're going to go. And if we can't, maybe we just go with Sam Darnold for 3 or 4 weeks until Purdy's ready, because we know Sam is a veteran. What worries me about Darnold is, some dudes kind of are who they are, and he's kind of a turnover machine, man. I don't know that that's going to get fixed quickly. He's turned the ball over, 55 interceptions and 13 fumbles lost in 56 games. That's a little concerning to me. So we'll see how it plays out. I think Lance still has an opportunity to overtake him, but I think the most Lance is going to be his QB2. This is Brock Purdy's team.
It's funny. I don't know that people are making that point, but you're absolutely right. Trey averaged, I think, 16 pass attempts per game in college, and he threw it. I mean, they ran it like 45 times a game.
Yeah.
So it was to say he came out of a run heavy scheme doesn't even really speak to it. He came out of a hugely run heavy scheme, barely threw it at all, was, to the point where he didn't have bad habits to break. He just didn't have habits.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. No, it's a good way to put it.
It's like, oh, go ahead.
No, it's because you talk about running too, and it's almost like they didn't watch him run, because he's not a fluid runner like Lamar Jackson. He doesn't protect himself. He kind of stumbles into contact. So when I was watching him, Kyle took a lot of heat for the play calls, and I didn't love him. It's not that I didn't love him because the quarterback shouldn't be running. Jalen Hurts runs, I didn't love him because I'm like, this dude's going to kill himself. Like he's running into contact. He's not protecting himself. And sure enough, he got a serious injury. So it's kind of like, did you not watch the way he ran in college? He's playing against these, D2 people or whatever they were at North Dakota State, and just running dudes over. This is the NFL. He's not going to do that. You got to protect yourself. And he doesn't have the speed of a Lamar Jackson. And he's a clunky runner. He just is. So maybe the Niners thought they could coach that out of him. Maybe he thought he would, I don't know, get that out of himself. I don't know. But that's been a problem as well.
I would love to see them use him the way they use the other quarterbacks, but obviously there's some development that may be needed as far as footwork and mechanics and everything that goes into playing quarterback. And then it's turned into this battle royale on 49er Twitter and YouTube where, people are just, first of all, I think, there's people that want to anoint him the starter and don't care about how raw he may or may not be.
Right.
And there's people that want to announce that he's a bust. And it's like, you know what? That's premature. And I just keep, I just feel like the 49ers knew that they had a long-term play. The question is, do they know how long that term would be? And are they prepared to go, if you ask me, give me your evaluation of this thing, I would say there's no doubt in my mind that Purdy's the number one guy ready to play. They should go with him. And I've been saying it all off season. The reason they're so intrigued by Purdy is not just how good he was, is that his timeline fits their timeline, as you kind of described initially. But that doesn't mean that just because you're going with Purdy and he fits your timeline currently, doesn't necessarily mean that Trey's a bust or that Trey's anything different than what you thought when you drafted him. It's just going to take some time. And if you ask me, are they both, franchise quarterbacks, or are they neither franchise quarterbacks? I know the easy thing to say is neither, but I actually think they're both franchise quarterbacks. I think Brock is showing right out of the chute that he's a franchise quarterback, unless he has a dramatic reversal off his rookie year, where most quarterbacks get better from year one to year two. Unless he goes the other way, I think he's an incredible find and a great quarterback prospect who can make plays off schedule and is very, very accurate and has a lot of the traits that you're looking for. But with Trey, I also see a franchise quarterback, but it's probably not till 2025. It's probably a couple years off. And the way the cap is structured and his pay is structured, I kind of wonder, will he be a 49er at that point to see this potential come to fruition? And to me, this is where I would feel really uneasy if I were advising John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, because yeah, he's not worth the money that you're paying him right now. And he may really not be worth the money that he's going to be paid in the next couple of years. But are you prepared to abandon this plan and maybe look horrible 3 years from now as he's playing really good football in another organization? Or are you going to bite the bullet on the cap and just pay the money and stay with the plan? What's your guess? Will they stay the course? If this thing is going to take 3 more years before he's really ready, will they stay the course or will they move off of the player?
I think they may move off of the player as early as the beginning of the season, depending on what happens. And I think it depends on.
I get that sense too.
Yeah, and the way I sort of see this is.
By the way, do you agree with that? I mean, do you feel? I mean, do you still see him as a franchise quarterback like I do, just 2-3 years off, or do you think that it's not going to happen for him?
Physically, I see it, and he seems like a good kid, and he's a smart kid, and all that stuff. I don't know what they've seen at practice. I don't know what they see when they're looking at film and meetings. Something has soured them on him somewhere. So I think physically, he can change his motion. He can work to get more accurate. And I agree with you. I think 2 or 3 years, he has a chance to still be a very good quarterback. But they've seen something, Larry, something that has soured them on him. And I don't know what that is. And I don't think it's anything we've seen. I don't think it's anything the general public have seen. I think it's something, again, in the meeting room or on the practice field, something has clearly given them pause. Maybe it's the fact that he's been injured 3 times or 4 times already in 4 starts or whatever it's been. I don't know. But I think what they see in Purdy, I think what Kyle Shanahan wants at quarterback is an extension of Kyle Shanahan. He wants a quarterback to run his offense, and sort of when Kyle wants him to hit the B button, that's where he throws the ball. And it would be nice if they have a little escapability. And that's exactly what Purdy is. We had Ross Tucker on the show a couple days ago. We were talking about this situation. And this is one of the plays that stuck out to me, and I think it was in the Seattle playoff game. There was a play where Deebo Samuel is streaking across the field, and he's wide open. I mean, nobody around him. And Purdy throws a post to Brandon Ayuk. And Ayuk kind of broke the route off, and it looked like a bad pass, but Ayuk just didn't turn the right way. They pan to Purdy, and Purdy's kind of making a motion with his hand, like, why didn't you keep going? And then they pan to Kyle Shanahan, and Kyle Shanahan's doing the same thing, like, why didn't you keep going? So regardless of how open Deebo was, and everybody was on Twitter like, oh, he missed Deebo. Kyle wanted the ball to go to Ayuk. Purdy threw the ball to Ayuk. They're on the same wavelength. And I really think that's where Kyle is with Purdy, where he's like, wow, I got this dude who's seen the field the same way as me. He's got a little escapability. Like, this guy's perfect. He's just going to run my offense. That's where I think he is with Purdy, where Trey is just, he's just a ball of clay. He can turn into, like you said, a franchise quarterback, but I don't know that that's going to happen. And I don't think the 49ers have the time for it. There's a lot of, I think, assumption that they're going to be back in the NFC Championship game, and they very well may be. But to do that 3 out of 4 years is really hard. And we're asking them to do that 4 out of 5 years now. So I'm not saying they can't. I'm saying a lot of things have to go right, and they need to take advantage of this window. And I just think they feel Purdy is the one guy they have that can do that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. They're in such a tough spot now because they don't have time to play him. And to develop them. There is no minor league system. Okay. You could argue that he won't develop fully without playing.
Probably won't.
And they don't want his value to move off of him at this point is not probably enough to intrigue them in any way. They just went through a bunch of quarterbacks last year. So if they trade him and they incur quarterback injuries, they'll be raked over the coals by the fan base and by the media for, trading away a young quarterback prospect. And his when he will blossom is anybody's guess. So it's a speculative deal. They could trade him this year. He could wind up somewhere else. And I know that even though there may not be anybody really willing to offer up anything real in compensation, there's still teams around the league that just based on his character and his athleticism will bring him in. at a minimum contract and develop him. So then it's like, well, what if he develops? What if you get, at the cut down date, you trade him for a 7th round pick, and I just threw out a 7th round pick just as the lowest compensation I can think of. Let's say there's no market for him and nobody wants to trade anything for him, and you were forced to either keep him on your cap at big numbers, or trade him for a late round pick. He could easily go somewhere else, and maybe the light comes on because he gets some consistent playing time, and then all of a sudden he's playing really well. And then what? Now you're talking about a 6'4" kid with, very athletic, who's potentially could play very good football, maybe even high level football. So, I mean, like, you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't. If you play him and he struggles, you could lose your job, right? I mean, I'm not saying that Kyle's on the hot seat, but they're in their window right now. They need to win right now. So of course they're going with Purdy. This is not really about Purdy at all. It's actually kind of a disservice to Brock that he even gets brought into this conversation. He's done nothing to be brought into this conversation except for play great football. It's really more about Trey's not a 2-year project. Trey's like a 5-year project, and we're already a couple years in, but there's a couple more years to come, it sounds like, and he needs to play to develop. John Lynch even said it, Al, at the combine. He's like, Trey needs to play, and that's the challenge, because we got a club that's ready to go. And what he didn't say there was what I read, which was he's not going to play here because he's not ready to go. He's so raw that we don't trust him to trust in his consistent. See, I've seen him do it in practice, but what it's about consistency. It's about not just doing it once. It's about doing it the same way every day with consistency. And that's what Brock offers them. So they're going with Brock. But I also think there's a very good chance that maybe the other 2 quarterbacks they have there maybe also have shown a little bit more consistency. Now, I haven't been there I've been there for every media availability, but they only make 1 day available per week. So, and to me, if you said to me, what do you see? I see a guy that's very comparable size-wise and talent-wise, and even performance-wise during these OTAs and minicamp to Sam Darnold. But I'm not there. I'm only getting 20% of the practices. I don't know what he's doing in the other 80%. I don't know how he's performing in the meetings. I don't know his base knowledge of football compared to the other quarterbacks. They have a lot more to go on than we do. So the one thing I refuse to do is I refuse to, every single time somebody who has some perspective or some connection, whether it be a Mark Schlereth, an Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, and Albert Breer. These guys are responsible reporters who do talk to people. And just because they got the Mac Jones, they traded up for Mac Jones, and they didn't trade up for Mac Jones, they ultimately wind up taking Trey. Just because they got that wrong doesn't mean that they're all collectively wrong when they say that Sam Darnold is ahead of Trey Lance. My guess at this point, as the number of people saying it, build up, that they're probably right. And what I'm seeing is probably wrong, right? I'm seeing comparable guys, but maybe Trey and Sam really aren't as comparable as what my eyes are telling me. So I just think they're in a really, really tough spot. If you trade him and he blossoms somewhere else, people will question you and rake you over the coals. If you play him and he plays poorly, people will complain about that, call him a failure. It's just, I don't think you can get a lot in return. I guess if I were Lynch and Shanahan, I'd play it the way they're playing it, which is bring him to camp, let him compete. Maybe he has a good preseason. Maybe somebody suffers an injury, and maybe at the cut down, somebody offers you a mid-round pick or a player, and you can at least say to your fans, yeah, you know what? We had to pivot off of Trey here, but we got Danielle Hunter. Or, it didn't work out with Trey, but, for this kind of a deal with Trey and a pick and a player, we got Montez Sweat, or something like that. And you can say, you know what? We're all in on winning this year, and we wish Trey the best because they really like him. That's the other thing. He's a great guy. They really like the kid, and they really like but they just see the rawness in his game, know he's going to make mistakes, and refuse to to have the ship go down this year or to even lose any games to develop him through those those games where you have to, he needs development. I guess that's my thought on it. Give me your reaction, and give me what was Tucker's takeaway, because I made a note to myself to go check that out, but I haven't seen it yet, and I really like Ross. Credit to you for getting him on your podcast. What was his takeaway on Trey and what he needs?
Well, he kind of looked at it from the outside looking in too, and he sort of turned around and asked the question on me a little bit. He's like, well, how did we get to this point? How did they draft this guy? And now it's gotten to this point. It's the same thing. He's just so green. He just doesn't have the experience. And you brought up a really good point. I just wanted to say, when you said with Brock, this isn't fair to him. And you're right, because if any rookie did what Brock Purdy did, we would be crowning him the next great thing. When you really look at what they did, Larry, the Niners could not score points for like a full year. It was like 20 games they were struggling going back to 2021 and into the playoffs. They had trouble scoring. You go into 2022, they're still having trouble scoring. And then they get McCaffrey. That made a big difference. I'm not saying it did not. It made a huge difference. But even in the games with Garoppolo and McCaffrey, they were horrible against the Chargers offensively. The Saints shut them down. And then Brock comes in, and they're scoring at levels we haven't seen since Steve Young. 32.5 points a game. They're just going up and down the field. Now, did McCaffrey play a big role in that? Sure. Does he have a lot of people around him? Absolutely. But they had a lot of people around them in the year previous. They had all these guys. So Purdy came in and sort of made something click. His TD percentage was 7.6%. The only 49er quarterbacks in a minimum of 7 games that were higher were Montana in 1987, and Steve Young was also 7.6 in 1994. If Trevor Lawrence did that in year one, if Mac Jones did that in year one, if Trey Lance had done that in year one, people would be like, oh my God. A 17-game average for what Purdy did is about 4,000 yards, 34 TDs, and 7 interceptions. That's all pro type numbers. So the fact that, he's a 7th round pick, everybody wants to hit the brakes, and maybe he will crash down to earth. I don't know. But what he did as a rookie, what I saw him do in the playoffs when he struggled in the first half against Seattle and then came out in the second half, brushed it off, and was phenomenal. When he played one of the best defenses in the league, and I always prepare it as a pitcher who doesn't have your best stuff. Sometimes you just got to get people out however you can. And that's kind of what he did in that Dallas game. He just didn't make the big mistake. And then he made a couple, off the cuff plays when he had to. Made some big throws at the end, and they win the game. He outplayed the $40 million quarterback on the other side of the field, who was also playing a great defense. So to knock him, or like you said, it's not really fair to him. In any other situation, he'd be then question starter and everybody would just shut up. So it's kind of like, but in the Trey thing, you brought up how do they get rid of him if they decide to move on, and how do you sell it? And people will say, okay, it's sort of a wash because Lance didn't work out, but Purdy did. Well, not really, because you did still give up 2 first-round picks for Lance. And the Niners are great. They've done a great job building the roster. I'm not saying they haven't. Phenomenal. And they're phenomenal with late-round picks. But we are going into the season, a season that is Super Bowl or bust, with Colt McKivitz at right tackle we have no idea about. And really nobody on the opposite side at defensive end of Nick Bosa. We hope Drake Jackson can take a next step. We hope Chris Kosura can work his magic with a Farrell or an Austin Bryant or something like that. You didn't have 2 first-round picks. If you have those 2 first-round picks, maybe you have another right tackle. Maybe you have an edge you're really excited about. So that stuff plays into it too. So if they do move on from him, they do have to try to replenish something because they did miss out on that. But it'll be a tough sell because there's still a lot of fans who I think, like you said, think Trey can do it. And they want to see this through, and we've seen the injuries in this QB room. I don't want to trade him. I think they need to keep him on the roster this year because you never know what's going to happen. You never know if a light bulb goes on, and then worry about next year. That's kind of my thought process on it. But I think there's a good chance he may not be here as early as September.
Yeah, no, I know I'm with you exactly. I want to keep him on the roster this year. And I want to keep developing him because I still believe he's going to be a franchise quarterback. But I also agree with John Lynch that he has to play. And he won't become a franchise quarterback if he doesn't play.
No.
It's not like you can just sit and watch and like, oh yeah, now I'm ready to roll. He needs to play. If anything, if the 49ers had a minor league system, they could send him to AAA. He could get all kinds of reps, and that's really what he needs. And it's like I'm almost of the belief that if he had a really good quarterback coach in AAA, and there was such a thing as a AAA, and he could play 5, 6, 7 games uninterrupted, and just iron out the bugs and learn the nuances. And I really think he's so dedicated as a student and as a prospect that he would do the work, and that he would emerge out of the other side as a dramatically improved football player. I think that in some ways the Niners are trying to protect him from failure, career failure, and protect themselves from looking bad for trading up for him by not putting him out there. And that's why you've got all these other options in front of him. Every time he turns around, there's another guy standing between him and the field. It was Jimmy, and then now it's Brock, and now it's Darnold, and then there's Brandon Allen. And it's like, it's not that Brandon Allen's better than Trey long term. I think everybody thinks like Trey's better, but Brandon Allen was number 2 to Joe Burrow. Sam Darnold started games at the end of the year. These guys came here. Somebody sold them on coming here. And I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when the 49ers were talking to those 2 quarterbacks' agents and what they said exactly to influence them to come here. Because the one that is amazing to me the most is Brandon Allen. Brandon Allen was a Joe Burrow hamstring injury away from being the Bengals starter, right? And now it looks like he's on a trajectory to go through camp and be waived by the 49ers. And then if nobody picks him up, placed on a practice squad for the 49ers, and the practice squad guys make a fraction of what the 53-man roster guys make. So what a tumble for that guy. I just got to think that that he's here with at least a chance to make the roster. Otherwise, are you telling me in a league with 100 quarterbacks getting employment that Brandon Allen couldn't find a better job since he was number 2 in Cincy? He couldn't find a number 3 job anywhere around the NFL, and he chose to be the number 4 guy here. So there's some things here that aren't really adding up if you really flesh it all out.
And that's funny, because I made that same point when it's not that Brandon Allen is this great quarterback. It's not that he's a starting quarterback. It's not that he's better than Trey Lance or anything like that. It's that Brandon Allen is a backup quarterback in the NFL, for whatever that means. He is. And he was the backup to one of the most important players in the NFL. He was, like you said, a hamstring injury away from being handed the keys to a Super Bowl ready roster. He's going to come here and be the 4th stringer. It's just weird.
Yeah.
It's just weird. There are a million. Go look around the league. If you're listening to the show right now, go look around the league and look at some of the backups in the league, and you'll be like, who even is that dude?
Right. Like, especially the number 3 guys are like, you could be a number 3 guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, there's no names out there. No offense.
Never heard of it. So the fact, no, believe me, if you saw me throw, no, none taken. So to think that he's going to come here and be like, yeah, I'll be the 4th stringer. It's just weird. It just doesn't add up. And was the point with Sam Darnold. Again, is Sam Darnold a great starting quarterback? No. But could he be a high-level backup on most teams? Absolutely. Why is he coming here day 1 to be the 3rd stringer? And everybody's like, oh, it's we can do 3 quarterbacks. It's just insurance. Sam Darnold isn't going to sign with a team on day 1 to be like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll come just in case you need me 4 quarterbacks down the line. It's a great point. What did the Niners say to them? So that's why I just think, if you really look at this, I'm a big Trey Lance guy. I want to see where his career is going to go. I believe in what he can do. I do. He's smart. He works hard. He's athletic. He's got a cannon. I think someone can turn him into a good player. But if you look at the writing on the wall, it ain't going to be here. And I don't think it's going to be here in a couple months. The Niners they haven't seen him in games, and that's not fair to him. But they have seen him at practice. They have seen him at meetings. They brought in 2 veteran guys who have been starters and backups in the league for a while that can come in and be the 2 and 3 if they need them to. I just think the writing's on the wall, man. I don't know if they'll have a deal in place for him, but I think or something available, I should say. But if something presents itself, I think he's gone, and I think he's gone by opening kickoff.
Yeah, by the cut down. And it's funny, I took a lot of heat because I did predict. I just was reading the tea leaves and listening to what everybody was saying and thinking they're going to move him during the draft. And I thought they would move him to move up, move down, get another pick, get another player. But I kind of assumed that he was closer to playing and that there would be a market. Sounds like he was available during the draft, but that nobody was making any real offers, which is kind of scary. I did an interview with Randy Mueller, the former GM of the Saints and Dolphins, and I asked him, Randy, this is a friend of mine. I mean, it's a guy that I've known for years. And I said, Randy, where did you have Trey on your board coming out? And he's like, I didn't. I said, what? I go, no. I mean, what round did you have him? And he's like, I didn't. And he said there wasn't enough tape on what he did at North Dakota State for me to put together an evaluation, and I don't wing it. I don't just, I'll just put him in the 4th round, or I'll just put him in the 2nd round based on what everybody else is saying. There wasn't enough there for me to actually make any kind of professional evaluation that I would stick my name to. And I thought that was like an eye-opener. That was so revealing to me. And it just makes me wonder, if the Niners had not taken Trey at 3, where would he actually have been taken? I got to think it would have been in the teens, but who knows? I mean, I thought Aaron Rodgers was going to go, 3rd or 4th in the draft that he came out in 2005. And, he fell into 23, 24, something like that.
Yeah.
So, obviously it worked out pretty good for Aaron Rodgers, but I if you were predicting the end game here on Trey, I think, I know, first of all, it's really unfortunate what it's become in the Niner world, because it's become this huge, polarizing. It's gotten so ugly. People digging in their heels, making all kinds of accusations, trying to turn this into something more than just what it is, which is a raw quarterback evaluation and where, exactly when is he ready. And so I think there's just an awful lot of people who are so, and no team's going to ever say anything bad about anybody, nor should they, right? People are hanging on that, every time somebody says something positive about Trey, it's like, see, they're talking positive.
Yeah.
There's no reason to bash Trey Lance. He didn't draft himself, and he didn't make himself this raw. And you know what I mean? This whole situation is just situational. But if you said to me, Krug, predict the end game, I would say that the 49ers are trying to win the Super Bowl, get Trey probably to a spot where he can play and develop, but also not look really, really, really bad either in the present or in the future for either the misevaluation or at least the misevaluation on how long it would take him to get there. I think if they ever do move off of him in a trade, some people would say, well, they may just cut him. I don't believe that. No, but if they do move off of him in a trade, I think it's going to be the kind of trade that will make it very difficult to discern his value. Like, here's Trey Lance and a 4th round pick in next year's draft and a conditional pick in another draft for a player who might be really good, but might be a free agent at the end of the year. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm saying, like, the Commanders, Montez Sweat, Chase Young, guys who have a lot of talent, have a big name, can help the Niners win the Super Bowl theoretically if they're healthy and ready to roll. Sweat's been really good in his career. Young's got unbelievable talent, but has been hurt, as you know. Something like that where, it doesn't look that bad on the surface because, you're getting a name back and you're getting a key piece back, and you can sit there and look at your fans in the eye and say, we're adding an outside pass rusher of note to help Bosa and help us win the Super Bowl. And that, but in reality, you're trading Lance and maybe even a couple picks, maybe a player with him, taking back a player, but that player's contract's up, so his value's a little low. You know what I'm saying? I think that's the kind of deal we may see at the cut down. To if he doesn't, I mean, there's also the chance that he looks great. What if he looks incredible this summer? And despite all the reported, rawness in his game, maybe he's developed and maybe he's, a lot closer to being ready than maybe they think today. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, I think if we do see a trade, Al, I think it's that kind of a trade.
And if we don't, that worries me too. So you brought up Washington. That's a good, like they have Sam. Are they really that excited about Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett? Like
Right.
They wouldn't take a flyer on somebody like Lance. And if they don't, does that say that the league has soured on him too? So I feel for the kid because he needed to end up in a place like CJ Stroud is in right now. Just a team like the Texans who
year one.
They're not going to do anything. Nobody expects anything. Just go out there and throw 20 picks if you have to. Just get experience. That's where he needed to be. But it was a situation that we've never seen before. We've never seen a quarterback that inexperienced, and he got drafted by a team ready to win the Super Bowl. That's probably never happened. Drafted at 3 for a team ready to win the Super Bowl and get inserted in to lead them to win the Super Bowl. I don't know. Looking back, it's one of those things like maybe we just couldn't get over our excitement for what he could do physically, because now I think back how excited I was, and I kind of say to myself, did we really think he was just going to be good that quick? Is that what we thought? It's just not realistic. So he's in a rough spot, but I agree with you. That's even in a Menahue type. If they get somebody who just has, okay, we got this defensive end and he had never really lived up to his potential, but now look what he's done with Krueger Sacco. Somebody like that they can get. I think that's a good thought in terms of where they could trade him. But I don't know, man. It's been so toxic with the 49ers quarterbacks going back to 2021, right? Because the fan base was pissed at Jimmy because he's hurt again and he's up there in the press box and doing whatever. And then it was the most, for a team that people say don't leak, everybody in the world knew they were looking for a new QB that offseason. So people just got mad at Jimmy and it was toxic. And like you said, the fans if you say anything good about Jimmy, it's like, what the hell are you talking about? And then it was Trey versus Jimmy. And I thought like it was so toxic for like a year and a half, Larry, but then Purdy came in and for the first time in a while, it was like everybody was behind the same guy again. It just kind of felt as the Niner fans, everybody was like, yeah, this is our dude. Like nobody's talking about this guy and that guy. Nobody's pissed. And now we're back to just the same toxic, like.
Here's an example of the toxic stuff. And it's like, I'm a believer in Trey. I'm literally the guy who's like, draft this guy. I still believe that he's going to become a franchise quarterback. And I keep stating that. I don't think I've ever tweeted anything negative about the guy ever. And here's what I get on a regular basis. Viking. I can't even listen to Larry when it comes to Trey anymore. Sorry, bud. You were so full of shit judging Trey in practice. How many starts had he had? I'm not judging him. I think he's going to be good. I just told you what I thought of him in practice. I think he looks very comparable to Sam Darnold in practice.
You got to look at the reality of the situation.
But the reality of the situation is that he's very, very raw. And I think I'm getting that indication from all these other reporters who are saying, you know what? He's behind Darnold. He's behind this guy. He's behind that guy. It's like they're not. And this idiocy. I mean, I hate to call it be so harsh because, I mean, some people are going to be hearing that and saying, you're calling me an idiot. But people that are saying, and I've heard this, oh my God, ad nauseum, these guys are saying this for clicks. Oh my God, you're so wrong. If all these guys reported the exact opposite, Trey's going to be the guy. Guess what? They're getting the same number of clicks. It's not what they're reporting that's getting clicks. It's who they are and what they're reporting on that gets the clicks. It's not the conclusion they've come to. It's the topic they're tweeting about. That's why they're getting clicks. They would get click if all these guys who are saying that Trey is, battling Darnold or may even be behind Darnold, if they all said that Trey's looking great and is going to challenge Brock, they'd be getting the same number of clicks. Stop saying it's about clicks. It's not about clicks. Those guys get paid to be right. Are they always right? No. But I think, guys, we need to kind of put our arms around the reality, which is the Niners like Trey, the players like Trey, Larry Krueger likes Trey, maybe Al Sacco likes Trey. It's not about liking Trey. It's not. And also saying that Brock Purdy should be the number one quarterback is not a diss on Trey. I know it is in this weird Twitter, 49er Twitter, YouTube, podcast world where everybody's dug in and wants to fight and wants to. It ain't about that. I love them both. I love them both so much that to this day, on June 29th of 2023, I still believe both guys are franchise quarterbacks. But one guy's ready to play right now and is kind of like an old soul who played 4 years at Iowa State and has really hit the ground running. The other guy has been in the offense longer than any other quarterback, and yet there's a lot of inconsistency and rawness to his game. And it sounds like, and that my eyes tell me he's as good as Darnold, and he could be number 2, but it sounds like they believe that he's really raw and it's going to take some time. And I think that your guess of he could be gone before week 1 is probably closer to reality than, my assessment that he's a franchise quarterback. It's just going to take 3 years from now or 2 years from now. But people still are just so dug in on their position that they make this about good and evil. And I'm just trying to talk Niners and cover the story as I see it. I have no agenda. I love Trey. I asked him questions at the last presser. I scouted his daddy in the Canadian League. I pounded the table saying that they should go with him over Mac Jones in the draft. I have no bad feelings about the guy. I think he's classy. I think he's smart. I think he's athletic, but I think he's raw, really raw. And that's where I'm at. And you can say I don't know shit, and you can rip me and criticize, but I mean, you're missing the boat. You're missing the story. And my question to you would be, if you're right and they wind up, let's say he looks pretty good in camp, but not great. And they decide they're going forward and they're going to move off of him. What's going to be the reaction? They've been in 3 of the last 4 NFC championship games, and they have a 23-year-old quarterback who they drafted who's looked really, really good. And they might be a Super Bowl favorite this year coming out of the preseason. But are the fans going to just not pay attention to any of that reality? And are they just going to come down hard on Lynch and Shanahan and the franchise if it doesn't work out with Trey?
I think it'll be a mix, but the way that I see it is, you brought up a good point. The Niners have done a lot of great things. They've also done some stupid things. Everybody does that in every walk of life. No matter how good you are at something, you do something at some point that's pretty stupid or just not good, or you have a bad day or whatever. The Niners have done there's a phenomenal job building this roster. What they took over in 2017 to where they are now roster wise, they were in the Super Bowl 3 years later. Phenomenal. Their late round picks, phenomenal. They've done it. I mean, John Lynch and Adam Peters, these guys have been great. Kyle Shanahan is a terrific head coach. He's put people around him coaches that Mike McDaniel and DeMeco Ryans and Robert Saleh, everybody gets hired as a head coach. Absolutely fantastic. But have they handled the quarterback position well? Absolutely not. They have not done a good job there. So you can say, hey, they've done great everywhere else, but they've struggled at the quarterback position. Both things can be true. And Brock Purdy kind of saved their ass, to be honest with you, because if they're in this situation without Brock Purdy, if Brock Purdy never comes to fruition, we may be talking about Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins may be here now. Kirk Cousins may be the quarterback now. It really, really is true. So I think if that happens, Larry, people get emotional. I always say when I try to do this job, I just take the colors off the uniform. I'm just looking at it not as a fan, as just what's on the field. This might as well be the Titans or whatever. I have to look at it objectively. But I think some fans will be pissed. I think some fans will understand it. But I think the reality of it is that the Niners have done a lot of great things and they're still a Super Bowl team, but they messed up on this Trey thing. And that's okay to say. And it's okay to mess up sometimes if you do other things well. If you mess up all the time, or 60% of the time you're not going to have a job. They haven't done that. But here they messed up, it looks like. Just is what it is. That's okay. They've done a lot of really good things too.
Yeah, no, and then what did you make of the Florio comments where he goes on with Cowherd and is like, the Rams and Niners will battle it out for Kirk Cousins. I don't believe that. I don't see that coming because one, I know Kyle liked Cousins at one point. I know Cousins would love to be here with these weapons and with Kyle calling plays, but the Niners built their team with the idea of a quarterback on a rookie deal.
Yeah.
They're not, if you go for Kirk Cousins, even if he gave you a bargain basement price compared to what he could get elsewhere, you're still saying goodbye to Ayuk. You're saying goodbye to, 5 or 6 other good players. And I don't think the Niners are in for that. The only way I see Cousins coming here is if Purdy can't play, Trey's too raw, Darnold falls on his face, Brandon Allen can't play. If they wind up going 0 for 4 on these quarterbacks, and I really doubt that's the case, the next offseason, I could see Cousins being here as a, emergency save us kind of a situation. I don't see it otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how Florio can say that because you don't know what's going to happen this year. You don't know what Purdy. If Purdy is even 85% of what he was, they're probably fine with that. So, like you said, they would have to fall on their face. They would have to have. Well, if you get to Brandon Allen, I guess you probably have a bigger problem. But they would probably have to have 3 quarterbacks absolutely fall on their face for that to happen. So we'll see. It's going to be another interesting season. But I can't talk Kirk Cousins until it's December and there's major issues. Other than that, I can't. My brain just can't handle it.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of people in the chat who are just still bitter about this, and oh my God, Krug, you're saying you like him, and then you're saying they should trade him. I'm not saying they should trade him. I'm saying that he's 2 years away, probably. That would be my. If you ask me, put your name on an evaluation, I would say I think he's improved. I think there's no doubt he's doing some things better, but I think he still has a ways to go. And there's no way he's doing the nuances of the position the way that Purdy is. I'd probably put him ahead of Lance or ahead of Darnold, but man, it's really, really close. I mean, Darnold does some things better than him. He does some things better than Sam. I don't believe in Sam because Sam's had a chance and Sam's turned it over a ton. I'd rather see Trey than Sam, but I get the sense that they'd rather see Sam than Trey. And they may even rather see Brandon Allen than Trey if push comes to shove. I don't know, but I think we're getting the picture. The picture is that they like Trey as a guy and they knew he was raw. They may not have known he was this raw. And now he's getting to the point where he's starting to get expensive. And it's like, oh my God, what are you going to do? I'm just trying to understand where we're at. I'm not advocating for a trade. I'm really not. I'm fine with them keeping him on the roster all year because I think he's going to get there. But the question is, what are you going to pay him along the way? And I don't know how much you know about the cap, but what is he looking? If he were 2 years away, Al? What are they looking at paying him this year, next year? What would it cost them? I mean, theoretically, they could pay this price if they really believed, like I do, that Trey's going to get there, and they may. They could pay the price on the cap because Purdy's so cheap. What would it cost them?
Let's see where he is. So I just pulled it up. So his cap hit this year is $9.3 million. Next year, it's 10.8. So, I mean, I guess in theory, they probably could carry that. Your QB room is still ridiculously cheap.
And it would be off kilter because your lowest, your third guy would be making the most money. He'd be making more combined than the first 2 guys. I don't know if that upsets people or upsets, the other quarterbacks or ruins the chemistry. I don't know. Yeah, but I would be tempted. I'd be tempted to pay him. I'd be tempted to pay him and just ride it out. I really would because to me, I'm more fearful of trading him and having him fulfill his potential elsewhere than I am in taking that cap hit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. And that's something that's going to be a realistic maybe fear for them, or just something they may have to live with. Again, we said they gave up a couple of years of first round picks for it. It looks like it's over here. Could change, but it looks like it's at the end of the line. What if he goes to Washington and he's a Pro Bowler in 3 years or 4 years? And you're rebuilding or trying to figure it out, or who knows at that point. But that's a real risk that they're going to have to take. That's why, maybe do they try to trade him into the AFC? Do they care? I don't know. But it's just gotten to the point, Larry, where the writing is on the wall. I hate to say it because, and also too, we keep bringing up camp. What if he does better at camp? Well, he's going to be better 3 weeks from now than he was in OTAs when we think he was just kind of as good as Sam Darnold. And I'm right there with you. I think he has the ability to be like, okay, oh shit, he took the step. Here we go. Like, you could see it. But at some point, it's like, is the light going to go on? And again, it's not fair to him. He hasn't been on the field a ton, and he's young. What is he, 23? I mean, he's still younger than some of the guys who got drafted this year. So it's a long way from over. But in San Francisco, I think you're right at the end of the line here. Just whether you love Trey, don't love Trey. Again, pretend it's not the 49ers if you're a 49ers fan. Pretend you're looking at the Titans. The writing's on the wall. Does Malik Willis look like he's going to be around very long?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's another guy. He supposedly had a good off season, but I mean, come on,
but if they bring in Will Levis, and you're like, so I mean, just kind of, I know you're emotionally attached, not you, but like your fans are emotionally attached to the team, and I get that way sometimes too. But just try to look at it rationally. If this is not the 49ers, if this is somewhere else, and you see the situation, do you think Trey Lance is going to be on the team? Probably not.
The part that's so weird about it is that these guys like each other. Right? Brock likes Trey because Trey's a good guy. And Trey likes Brock because Brock's a good guy. So there's zero animosity between those two guys. There's zero, like, who should start, because Trey saw Brock succeed with all these new, performing all these nuances, his footwork and the short game and his accuracy and his command and his, he saw him operate the quarterback position. So it's not like Trey's sitting there going, that guy should not have my job. No. Trey's like, yeah, that guy deserves to play. There's no vibe between Trey, no bad vibes between Trey and Brock at all. The quarterbacks themselves get along. It's a great culture. You can tell. I'm at every practice. These guys get along. They, and it's not for the cameras. It's not like, oh, they're making it up. No, these guys like each other. I can tell. I've been to enough football practices to know when quarterbacks are rivals and when they like each other. These guys all like each other and they have mutual respect for one another. So the toxic nature of this thing has zero to do with them and each other. It's all to do and really not to do with the players or the coaches. It's all the viewers of this. You know what I mean? It's all the people that are dug in, and it's like, I want this guy. And it's really sad because it's not fair to Brock, but it's also not fair to Trey. And that's kind of where we're at, and it's like, it's unfortunate. Let's talk about something besides the quarterbacks, because the team is what you got with Ross Tucker and got him on the podcast. He's always been one of my favorite NFL, commentators. I know one of the topics that you teased you were going to talk about with him was Kyle Shanahan. What was the nature of your guys' discussion on Shanahan? Was it where Shanahan ranks as a coach? What Ross thinks of him as a coach? What did he have to say about Shanahan?
Well, he did the ratings of coaches, and he had Shanahan 6th. And I got to think who he had ahead of him. He had
Sirianni, right?
Sirianni was 5. Reed was 1. Belichick was 2. Tomlin was 3. Sean Payton was 4. And Sirianni was 5.
Right.
So for me, when I look at that, I think Pete Carroll, to me, I mean, I hate the Seahawks. I don't like Pete Carroll, but Pete Carroll's a phenomenal coach. He's won Super Bowls. John Harbaugh has been good for really long, won a Super Bowl. So there's guys that,
Doug Peterson's won a Super Bowl.
Peterson, Sean McVay, even though
Sean McVay belongs higher than Sirianni.
Yeah, a lot of guys you can move around in there. But I think the 6 to 8 range is right for Shanahan. And I thought that was a good spot for him 6. And I asked him, what was your basis for that? Why do you think he's an elite coach? So basically what he said is the proof is in what you've seen. He's been in the NFC Championship, which is incredibly difficult to do. Here's a guy who plays in the league. He knows how hard it is to get there. Played in the league, I should say. So based on 3 out of 4 years that he did that, in that he did that with Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. And he made the point that when you see these teams that do this, the Chiefs, the Patriots, they have elite quarterbacks. And I said, even back in the day with the Eagles, that they had Donovan McNabb. Well, go look at the quarterbacks in the early 2000s. Donovan McNabb might have been a top 3 quarterback. Peyton was just starting out. Brady hadn't reached peak Brady yet. Kurt Warner was down. I don't even know if he was starting at that point because he had that weird Giants era, and Brett Favre had a few down years. So McNabb was an elite QB. So most of the teams that do this have elite QBs. Maybe historically, the Washington teams, the Gibbs teams, did it with a bunch of different quarterbacks. So they may be the only sort of comparable thing to the Niners. They won Super Bowls, but that you've seen a team continue to have this kind of success without really having an elite or franchise type QB. So that was for him, that he's done it 3 out of 4 years and that he's done it with average QB play. Sort of shows how good he is. But I think with Shanahan, for me, look, the head coach is the CEO. So it's just not about him. It's about the people you put around you. And he's put we just talked about it, great coaching staff around him. You go from Salah to DeMeco Ryans. You had Mike McDaniel there. Brian Greasy, obviously, it looks anyway on the surface that he did a good job. Jimmy played much better than he had when he was on the field last year. Purdy was phenomenal. So he puts these good people around him, Chris Kosarek. And that's part of being a good head coach too. So they're so well coached. We know Kyle's a good play caller, and the proof has been there basically with his wins and losses. So that's sort of what Ross's take was on it.
Yeah, I think Kyle's a top tier coach. I thought Ross was a little Northeast, favoritism there to Sirianni. I mean, Sirianni,
too early.
if you want to say that you think Sirianni's a great coaching prospect, fine. But come on, you're going to put him in front of Sean McVay, who's been to 2 Super Bowls and won 1. You're going to put him in front of Shanahan, who's, got to a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo, got to an NFC title game with a Mr. Irrelevant. I thought his Sirianni ranking was laughable, but I love Ross nonetheless. All right, let's finish with let's talk about a couple players that we're really excited about seeing this summer. Give me 1 or 2 that you're fired up on seeing this summer. Veteran, rookie, anybody on the roster who you really, if you were on the sideline at training camp and whether you're a fan sitting there with the binoculars in the seats or if you're actually on the sideline walking up and down, who do you want to watch this summer?
I kind of think a guy who has something to prove because he is about to get paid is Brandon Ayuk. Now, Brandon Ayuk
looked great so far.
All the reports that he's looked great. He's had good seasons. Last year he was terrific. And you look at what guys get paid on the open market. Brandon Ayuk will get $22 million a year on the open market. Look at what some of these receivers are getting paid. He knows that. The 49ers know that. So he wants to come and show out. And the Niners, I'm sure, want to find a way to keep him. And we can get into the Debo versus Ayuk thing. Who can they keep? Can they keep both? Whatever down the line. But to me, he's a guy that I think he's going to come out with something to prove this year. And he knows that his livelihood is sort of on the line because he's got this huge contract that is in his grasp, whether it's from the 49ers or someone else. So I really believe he's going to come out this year and look to have a huge year. And if they have Purdy, who's going to maybe be a little bit better than we've seen throwing the ball intermediate and downfield a little bit more, I think Brandon's going to have a huge season. So he's a guy that I'm going to continue to look at. The other thing that, and sometimes I feel like I'm the only one saying this, the defensive ends outside of Nick Bosa scare the living shit out of me.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. Yes.
If anything happens to Bosa, knock on wood, or Bosa just last year looked like he might have been hurt. He looked like he wore down a little at the end of the year. And how can he not? These guys have played 19, 20 games 3 of the last 4 years. So I know they have Hargrave on the inside who will make a difference, obviously, and take, people are going to pay attention to him. But you don't have Amenahue anymore. You don't have Ibukam anymore. You don't have Willis.
And those guys were all good players.
Yes. I look at the 2021 playoffs. That defense just was sending waves at people, waves at Prescott, waves at Stafford. waves at Aaron Rodgers, and that's why they were so good. I don't know that they have that at the defensive end position anymore. So I feel like that's been glossed over because you have the big names and they're so good up. They're so top heavy with Hargrave and Bosa and I guess Armstead. It's been glossed over a little bit. Yeah, they have this great defensive line. They do, but it's not as deep as it has been in previous years. And again, I'm not talking like I want to go 10-7 and make the playoffs. This is a Super Bowl team. So that scares me. That's why I kind of like your trade idea for like a Young or a Sweat. But that's the other position I'll be watching is Drake Jackson going to look like he took the next step? Is Cleveland Farrell, does he look like he can be an Arden Key? They need somebody else there to just take a little pressure off Bosa and give a little bit more pass rush on the other side.
Yeah, to me, if there's one piece of the puzzle they have to add, they got to add one more rusher. Whether it's Justin Houston, a Montez Sweat in a trade, Ngakwe, Melvin Ingram, Pierre Paul, if he's still out there. I mean, they need one more veteran edge rusher. Doesn't have to be a big name guy, but they do need somebody else, because I agree with you. Cleveland Farrell and Austin Bryant and Robert Beal, and I mean, these guys, Robert Beal, I've got some hope for because he's so athletic, so long, so fast. But the other guys are a little bit just more, they're a step beneath the guys that walked out the door.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Bosa goes down for 3 weeks with a hamstring injury, and they could be in a dire situation and asking Drake Jackson to play every snap, and that is not a good spot to be in. Yeah. So they're a little thin on the defensive end spot, and they got to have somebody else. Two graybeard hairs says Brock Purdy is the tallest guy I know laying on his back. Nice comment there from two graybeard hairs. What about position battle? Is there a position? Oh, and by the way, for me, I'm looking for Jordan Mason. I think Jordan Mason's going to bust out in this camp. I think he's really special. He's in great shape. He's fast. He's explosive. I loved what I saw out of Braden Willis. Braden Willis really looks good to me. I'm really intrigued by Ronnie Bell's ability to catch the ball. Tay Martin in year 2. I think they got a couple young receivers there that are really exciting. The linebackers, Graham and Winters and Marcelino, very, very exciting to me. But if there's the two guys out of nowhere that I'm like, now, I'd put my scouting chops on the table on these guys in their defense, and neither of them are names that people are like, I can't wait to see these guys. It's Deshaun Jameson and Spencer Wagee. Spencer is a defensive end / defensive tackle, North Dakota State. But I mean, he's very advanced with a high revving motor, and he's strong, and his hand placement's really, really advanced for a young defensive lineman. I think he may be more of an end. He might even be a first and second down end, playing the run. But he's close to 300 pounds. He moves exceptionally well. He had the same 10-yard split as Aldon Smith had coming out of Missouri, if you can believe that.
That's interesting. Wow.
And then Jameson was probably the best. Him and Womack, I thought, were just phenomenal in the OTAs. They're breaking on the ball. They're showing speed. They're showing quickness. They're showing the ability to mirror receivers up and down the field. Jameson's even defending some of these crossing routes, and he's in the hip pocket of the receivers. Deshaun Jameson, who played a full career at University of Texas, he is a player, and there's no question in my mind that Jameson and Spencer Wagee are gonna step up in this camp and really be surprises for sure. But is there a position battle or two that you're excited about this summer?
Yeah, 2. It's not as deep into the roster as that, but I think safety. I think if Jair Brown is ready, I think he's going to start. And Gibson played great last year. He's on a 1-year deal. He was kind of, am I going to come back type thing. If Brown's ready, there's no need to keep him off the field. The guy's a ball hawk guy, is a big character guy. The 49ers really like him a lot. I thought that was a phenomenal pick in the 3rd round. That's a position to me where I think you could say by the end of summer, oh, wow, Brown is the starter. And they have Gibson there as insurance. But Brown has come out and done that. So I'm interested to see how that safety battle works out. The other thing you alluded to it is running back, because I don't have any faith in Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell's terrific, violent, fast runner, but he hasn't stayed on the field. He can't stay on the field. And you do need someone, because again, we want Christian McCaffrey healthy for 20 games or whatever it's going to be, 19 games, whatever, through the whole season in the playoffs. They need another running back to help take some carries off him and some punishment away from him. So is Jordan Mason going to step up? I like his game, but I feel like he had opportunities to last year and the Niners didn't put him on the field. So was it just a rookie thing? Is he going to step up and have a better year? And there's always running backs that I'm sure I'll get to know them in camp that come out of nowhere on this team. So there could be somebody else that steps in. But that backup sort of third string running back position I'm really looking at, because I think they could end up having a big impact this year.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, they do have a couple of undrafted rookie running backs that look good to me. I interviewed Ronald Awatt on the show, and he's a terrific athlete. He's got great ability to catch the ball. He catches it really naturally. And then they also have Kalen Laburn, who started at Florida State as a 5-star recruit coming out of high school and then transferred to Marshall after graduating from Florida State. Laburn's really powerful in the lower body, strong legs, keeps the legs churning, a lot quicker than you think, will make you miss in space. It's amazing, really, that they keep finding these guys. I mean, they have McCaffrey, Mitchell, Mason, Ty Davis-Price, and now these two undrafted rookie free agents. And I think they're both kind of intriguing. So they're really, really loaded at running back. How concerned are you about Colton McKivitz at right tackle?
So I'm talking myself into it because I feel like anybody they put there kind of works. So you go back to 2019, you have McGlinchey and Staley out, and it was Brunskill and Skule, right? They didn't lose a game. It seemed like they didn't miss a beat. And McKivitz played in an NFC Championship game, and it seems like the Niners have been grooming him a little bit. I feel like they're going to be okay. Are they going to be NFC Championship, have to go against the Eagles defensive line or Dallas defensive line okay? That I don't know. That we'll have to see. So it's not going to hurt them in the sense that, oh my God, it's a turnstile. We've only won 9 games. They're not going to do that. They're going to be fine when you get to January and you got Micah Parsons and you got all the waves of people that Philadelphia throw at you. Are they going to be okay then? And honestly, I'll be honest with you, other than Trent Williams, I don't know the answer to that for anybody on the line, but we won't know that until we see it. I like what the season Aaron Banks had. We'll see if he can continue to move forward. Ken Burford, who was splitting time last year, really cement that right guard spot. Is Brendel going to keep improving? Does Feliciano have to step in there at some point? And McKivitz is the huge question. But they didn't have many other options. They kind of put themselves in this position. But I agree with what the commenter just said about not worried about McKivitz. I think he'll be fine. We'll see when we get to January against those big teams how he does there. But I think overall, I think he'll be a solid starter for them.
You know, the one thing about McKivitz is he won't, he's not going to panic. I think he's going to be a pretty good pass protector. His run blocking may not quite be to the McGlinchey level, but I think McKivitz, he's known this entire offseason that the job is his. He's, the one thing Trent Williams told us last year about McKivitz is like, he doesn't get too high or too low. He doesn't sit there and go, oh no, I've got to block this guy this week. He's not that kind of a guy. He's a real he's an old school kind of backwoods tough guy who loves to hunt and fish. And he's just, he just doesn't get too high or too low. He just kind of rolls with it. Great personality, but I also think he's a talented player. He may not be your prototypical, 6'6", 350, guard or, offensive tackle, but I think he can be effective. I think he can be effective for them. What do you think of the secondary with Wilkes back? Wilkes is the coordinator. And what do you think of Wilkes? Wilkes is going to call the games. He's not going to be on the sidelines. He's going to be up in the booth. I think that makes sense as a guy whose kind of emphasis is defensive backfield play, because you want to be able to see the angles. You want to be able to kind of see the coverage. It's hard to necessarily, tell guys, hey, you're out of position here or you're out of position there when you're on the sideline. It's a difficult thing to get on the headsets with a guy and say, to critique him. But what's your thoughts on the secondary? Because, the Niners have built their defense kind of the opposite of Seattle. Seattle builds from the back to the front, spends a lot of their money in draft capital on the backside. Niners going the other way. They spend a lot up front, and they kind of feel like they can make do on the back end. But this year they added a number of interesting players on the back end: Jair Brown, Darrell Luter. I mentioned Deshaun Jameson. Not to mention Isaiah Oliver.
Yeah, that's the big one to me.
Yeah, they've changed some person. Now they've lost Emmanuel Mosley and they've lost Jimmy Ward, and those guys are true alphas and real leaders. But give me your thoughts on the Niners secondary, because that's going to be I'm looking for maybe the D line is not quite as deep as we've already kind of talked about, but I think the secondary could really be a strength.
Yeah, and a lot of it depends on if Lenore is going to look the way he did in the second half of the season when he really came on. I mean, that's huge, obviously, because you're replacing Mosley, who was terrific. But Lenore did a really good job. Travarius Ward's a number one corner for sure. I like what they've done at safety. I like the Jair Brown pick, like I said. Gibson's there. Hufunga obviously had a great season. The Isaiah Oliver signing was really underrated to me, and I kind of went to school on him a little bit because I didn't know a lot about him when they signed him, and he missed times with injuries. He might have torn his ACL and he came back late. I think that's what he hurt. But Atlanta said when he's not there, you see it. Like, we missed him. Like, he is a huge player on our defense, and he's going to come in and he's going to man that slot. He said Jimmy Ward he's a terrific player, but I think Oliver is going to come in and do a really good job. And I was reading a PFF article on him. And I don't have the statistics in front of me, but his last two games, there was one game he had like 9 tackles and a sack. Like, he was all over the field. And they said if he plays moving forward like he did the last 2 or 3 games of last year, you're looking at maybe the best slot corner in the league from what PFF said. So I don't think people know a lot about him, and most people don't know a lot of people that are on the defense of the Falcons or don't know a lot about them. But he's going to be a guy, I think, that's going to come in at the slot and really solidify things for them there. And then Luter's a guy, a late round pick, like you said. I like him long. I think he's going to be a good player there. So they've done a good job in the secondary, and they have a defensive coordinator who, like you said, that's a specialty. And look, Kyle Shanahan can hire us at defensive coordinator right now, and you trust it because he's got such a good track record. So Wilkes is an experienced guy, and Kyle seems like he knows what he's doing with his coaches. So might there be a few, they got to get together first couple games of the season and feel each other out type thing, maybe. But I think this is going to be a top defense again, as long as it stays healthy.
2 last questions before we let you go. One, the headline of the day is that the NFL has suspended 4 players for gambling violations. Luckily, none of them are 49ers. Isaiah Rodgers, Rashad Berry of the Colts, a free agent named Demetrius Taylor. They were all suspended indefinitely through at least this season for betting on NFL games last season. In addition, the Titans offensive tackle Nicholas Frere, who played at Ohio State, is being suspended 6 games for betting on other sports at the workplace. And the Colts subsequently then announced that Rodgers and Berry have been waived as a consequence of their suspensions. They weren't significant players. But this is a real issue for the NFL because the rank and file player, not the stars, but the rank and file player in the league, the careers are short. They don't make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And because they don't make a lot of money and there's a lot of interest on these games, and by contrast, there is probably billions of dollars wagered on the NFL every year. Do you see the atmosphere that we're in? Do you see the climate that we're in? You've got an underpaid workforce that have insider information and insider, ability to impact games, but they don't make a lot of money. And so they could be susceptible to trying to either be influenced by professional gamblers or just trying to make a few extra bucks because of the intel that they possess. And I think this is kind of the tip of the iceberg. I think we're going to find out that, this is a real problem. And with gambling becoming, a huge part of our culture, and with some of these players not having tons of career options, maybe beyond football, they might be all in on football and they're looking at a 3-year career, and they might only have the ability to earn, $600,000-$700,000 over their entire life of their career. maybe some of these guys are tempted to gamble, and gamble on something that they know about. To me, I think this is a real problem for the NFL. Give me your quick thought on how the NFL. I mean, they obviously are doing some things to police this and to keep an eye on all of their players, but I don't think this is the last example of this that we see and we've already seen a few. I mean, we saw Calvin Ridley suspended for a full year. He is a significant player. What do you think of where we are as a society with gambling and football and the players not making a lot? It just seems like we're going to see this story again and again.
Well, the gambling is not going away because there's tons of money involved. And anytime there's tons of money involved in anything, it doesn't go away, right? And the NFL knows that a lot of the popularity has to do because a lot of people are either playing fantasy or they've got money. I mean, let's be honest, it's been that way with football forever. Yeah. But in terms of the guys, I mean, I don't know what they did. I don't even know what Calvin Ridley did. Like, I don't know if they're doing a pool, something as innocent as a work pool or actually betting on games. I don't have any idea what they did. But why the NFL has come down hard on it is because if you get one thing come out where a dude missed a tackle and lost the game, and you found out he had money on something, I mean, the whole thing comes down, right?
Right. Like if the audience believes the games aren't on the level, right, it's a huge problem. Yeah.
And God forbid a quarterback. Oh my God, if that ever. So but that's why I think they have to come down so hard on it. And again, I don't know. Maybe they did an NCAA pool. I don't know, but maybe it was worse. I have no idea. But they have to come down hard on it because it's the integrity of the game. So, like you said, anybody who gets caught, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be a year. I think teams will react like that, where they're just getting rid of these guys. Obviously Calvin Ridley is going to bounce back with Jacksonville, but these other guys who are fringe players, their careers are probably going to be over. So they got to come down hard on it. And I hope it ends, man. I really do. Just don't want to see the integrity of the game get hurt.
Yeah. And last one, Two Gray Beard Hairs says, love you, Larry. Thank you. Two Gray Beard Hairs. We appreciate the super. Last question. Where every year there's teams that come out of nowhere. There's always breakout teams. There's always teams that, you're 5-12 one year, you're 12-5 the next year. And you almost don't see it as much in some other sports as you do in the NFL, but the schedule changes. You might play an easier schedule. You may have better rest. You've got a few changes, and you just see these dramatic swings from year to year. There's injuries involved, so on and so forth. Give me your breakout teams. Give me your teams that, man, we're sitting here and nobody thinks they're going to be any good, but Al Sacco does. Who do you got?
I don't know if I got to pick teams. Carolina was better than they showed than their record last year.
They were 7-10 last year. They're one of my teams this year.
Yeah, and they could have easily been 10-7. Like, that could have gone the other way pretty quickly. So that's a team. If the quarterback is good, Frank Reich's a pretty good coach. They don't have a lot of receivers, but that's a team that I think, if they protect Young and he has a good rookie season, could end up, especially in that division, could end up maybe making the playoffs. Oh man, am I missing anybody here? Let me think in the AFC.
A lot of people like Denver, with Sean Payton there. Sean Payton.
That's another good one. I find it hard. Russell Wilson, I heard, take this with a grain of salt, I heard he had a lat injury last year. So I don't know if that excuses some of the decision making or the fact that his teammates didn't seem to like him, but I had been told that he was hurt. He's hurt. Like, he was hurt. Like Aaron Rodgers had a hurt thumb last year. I think that had a lot to do with his season. We'll see if that's true or not this year, because if Sean Payton can't fix it, really nobody can. But that could be a team, like you said, that comes out and all of a sudden they've won 10 games in that division. And that might actually, I think, be a good division this year. The Chargers will be a little bit better because Herbert, again, was hurt last year. The Chiefs will be the Chiefs, and I think the Raiders are going to be a disaster. But those other three teams could be pretty good. So, yeah, Denver's a good one in Carolina. Those are the two that I'll say.
I kind of like, tell me what you think of this one. I kind of like D'Amico in year one to do some good things. Now, a lot of people saying, why? I mean, you got first year and CJ Stroud, but I've heard really good things about CJ Stroud, that he's looked really accurate. I think they're going to run the ball heavily with Dameon Pierce. They brought in Devin Singletary. They've got Robert Woods. I think John Mechie is gonna bust out. Tank Dell. They've got some kind of sleeper receivers there. You added Will Anderson up front. They also added Hassan Ridgeway. You got guys like Denzel Perriman, Corey Littleton, Jimmy Ward, Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley Jr. on the back end.
Good secondary. Very good secondary.
I definitely I think D'Amico with a rookie quarterback, no expectations. They're going to play loose. Bobby Slowick, I've heard good things about Bobby Slowick. He comes from the Niners and steps in. They kind of have the Niner offense and D'Amico and a really positive vibe. A lot of young, talented players. Will Anderson, I think, is a real difference maker up front on their defense, even as a rookie. They brought in Sheldon Rankins. They've got some decent players on defense. I think Houston's one of those teams. I mean, their record last year was horrible, right? They were 3-13, and I'm not saying they're going 13-3, but I could see 500 or slight, a game over, a game under, right around 500, and they were 3-13 last year. So, they won 20% of their games. I think they could be a dramatic improved team this year because of D'Amico. I'm a real believer in D'Amico. I think that D'Amico's a leader. I think he's a culture guy. Guys run through walls for him. They'll be improved on both sides of the ball. I kind of like the Texans to make a leap forward.
Yeah, if they hit on Will Anderson, it's pretty good defense. Secondary, there's a lot of good players in the secondary. So we'll see. The division's not, I don't think Tennessee is going to be great. The Colts are definitely sort of in a weird spot, and Jacksonville looks like they're going to take a step, but we'll see. So yeah, I could see them getting to look in the NFL. 3 plays are the difference between 3 wins, right? So I could see them getting to 7 or 8, maybe, if things break right.
Yeah. Hey, Al, great stuff, man. We really appreciate you. Tell people if they haven't checked out your podcast, if they are not familiar with, when and how often you broadcast and what kind of stuff you put out there. You obviously talked to Ross Tucker in the last couple of days, and that's great. People ought to check that out. But tease what you got going on and tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, we're the 49ers Web Zone No Huddle podcast. You can get us anywhere you find your podcasts, Spotify, Apple. We're part of the Odyssey network, so we're under the Odyssey umbrella, which is cool. And yeah, we broadcast usually twice a week. We'll do shows. Now it's June and July, it's a little slow, but during the season as it ramps up, definitely at least twice a week. And yeah, we try to have a lot of guests on. We just had Ross Tucker on. Ricky Waters was on not too long ago. Mike Silver, Cynthia Freeland from NFL Network. So we try to keep it fresh for people with guests. And it's myself, it's Brian Rennick, it's Zane Knoxby. We're going into the 7th season of the show. We've been around for 7 years. Other than that brief time I was with KNBR for a little while when I wasn't with the show. It's been 7 years doing the show. So we're very lucky to be able to do it. And, Larry, you've come on a few times and been a big supporter of us. So we appreciate that. But yeah, just check us out if you haven't.
Yeah, it's a great guest that you just threw out there. Ricky Waters is one of my favorite. I think Cynthia, her content is spectacular. I'm trying to chase down Silver to come on this show in the next week or so. So there's some really, really good guests, and you do a great job, man. So keep it rolling. Thanks for your time this morning. Thanks for your perspective. I love what I love about your guys' podcast is that it's consistent and you guys are credible. And it's like you're not screaming and yelling. You're not going lowest common denominator. You're not trying to just, we'll go outlandish today so we can get 15 more people to like us or subscribe to us. You're in it for the long haul, and I respect the hell out of you. So thanks very much for coming on, and I'd love to have you on periodically throughout the season on my YouTube channel and get your guys' perspective because I really do value it. So. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and thanks again for coming on.
All right, thanks, buddy. Good to talk to you.
Take care. Al Sacco, really good guy, and he does a great job. He really does. And check them out, their podcast on the Niners, as he said, on the Odyssey Network. All right. I hope, we kind of frame that. I know there's still going to be people that are like, oh, my gosh, the Trey thing. But I think that was one of our better conversations on the quarterback situation and where it stands. And I think we're being as fair and as responsible as we possibly can be in discussing this topic. Let's play a couple spots here. I'll hit the chat. We'll have a couple words before we bolt for the door. I'm doing a hit on ESPN Honolulu in about 30 minutes or so. But I definitely would love to read a couple of the chats and respond to a couple of those comments coming up next. But first, a word from our sponsors. On the bottom of the screen, you see the scroll, Marin Autoglass, one of our newest sponsors, marinautoglass.com. 415-883-3030. If you're driving down the street, you crack a windshield, you need someone to take out that windshield and glaze in a new one, sweep away all the old glass and bring you, back to 100% with your windshield. Marin Auto Glass is phenomenal. My good buddy Saeed is the owner of the company. They're at marinautoglass.com. Once again, 415-883-3030. We're also brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in Marin from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. And here's what they look like in Marin County.
A Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. How can you go to church if you don't believe in God? And along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. It wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet, and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression, that life is good.
All right, we're coming down the home stretch on the Krueg Show. Hope you enjoyed Al Sacco, and he does a really good job. And there's no question about it. He's an outstanding guest. So thanks to him for stopping by. What we have going on later on the show? Well, at 11:20, I'm going to be doing an interview with ESPN Honolulu, talking a little 49ers and maybe a little Warriors as well, with our friends there. And then tomorrow on the show, Jack Hammer's going to stop by at 11 a.m. We're also hoping to catch up with Warriors first-round draft choice Brandon Pajemski later on today. Probably going to tape it. And then Saturday morning, and then we'll release that either tonight or tomorrow, if we can get that taped this afternoon. And then tomorrow, or I should say Saturday on the show at 8 a.m., the coach is coming back. Now, I know a lot of people were up in arms because the coach was advocating playing Trey this year and, not tanking the year, but he was basically saying start Trey. And his thought was, hey, look, they didn't win last year, win the Super Bowl last year, and they need to develop Trey. And he says they need to develop him so much that he wants him to play right out of the chute. And a lot of people reacted. I've never seen so many comments on last week's show with the coach, but I really enjoy the coach, and he'll be by Saturday morning, 8 a.m. on the West Coast, 11 a.m. on the East Coast. Other guests that we're chasing down, Larry Harris, the Warriors general manager, is going to join us probably next week. Jeff Garcia, the former Niner quarterback, trying to chase him down as well. David Lombardi's coming back from Africa. We're going to have him on the show. Obviously, Grant Cohn's going to come back on. Jordan Elliott, Wayne Breezy, Jesse Naylor, trying to chase down FP Santangelo from KMBR. Damon Bruce will be with me next week. Obviously, the great Vish Kumaran. And also, I had the uncle of Marcelino McCrary Ball contact me about coming on the show. I'm a big fan of Marcelino. And so we're trying to chase down Marcelino, maybe get him on the show sometime next week before camp starts, and get a perspective from, I think, one of the really good young players the 49ers have. I really do. I think Marcelino is going to be terrific. Absolutely terrific. I don't even think that he's going to be like special teamer. I don't even think he's going to be a starter. I think he's got the kind of potential that Greenlaw has and that Fred has. I mean, I think Marcelino is going to be a very, very good NFL linebacker. And I don't know that everybody shares that belief, but I believe it. And I told him that last year. I said, hey, man, I'm a believer in your game. This guy played corner and then nickel at Indiana. He can flat out cover. And I was at a guardsman dinner with Damon Bruce and our wives 3 weeks ago now, maybe 3.5 weeks ago. And Marcelino was there. And I'm like, bro, you're looking jacked. And sure enough, at OTAs, he's put on some weight. He looks about 225, but he's ripped. And he's flowing around. He flows naturally to the ball. He's got great instincts, great coverage ability as a former DB. The dude is absolutely primed for a takeoff. I'm telling you, Niners got a couple guys like this. Marcelino and Kalia Davis on D, Jordan Mason on offense, guys that are been in the program and are just getting ready to absolutely launch into another realm in their career. And I can't wait to watch it. And I know you guys are all fired up for it as well. And all it takes is one or two guys like this to go from undrafted free agent to Pro Bowl, and the 49ers might have the deepest roster in the game. So I'm looking forward to chopping it up with Marcelino and talking a little bit about the year that he had last year, and what he's got hopes for this summer. I'm a believer that I'm a big Marcelino McCrary Ball fan, big believer that he's special as a football player. All right, let's hit a couple of these chats because we got a bunch of people in here who have a number of interesting things to say. So let's hit them here. We got this one, El Camilo Dorado. Damn, Larry taking over. I don't know about that, but we're what can we say? We're putting our best foot forward here. Dusty Gold says, was there a team picked for HBO's Hard Knocks? I heard it could be the Jets, Saints, or Bears. There's criteria to make that show. Just wondering. It's the Jets. And I think the Jets are going to be fun watch. I like that show. I know there's people that are like, it's played out. It's done its deal. But I'm a big fan of that. And this year you get Saleh, you get Rodgers, you get the Zach Wilson backup. You get Garrett Wilson, who's, I think, taken off, Quinnen Williams. There's a lot of good little subplots around the Jets. The Jets, in some people's minds, are going to be a top-tier team. I know they have a major rest advantage on the rest of the league. I mean, they have a rest advantage in like 12 games or something like that this year, where like the Bears have a rest advantage in no games. And that net rest story is an interesting one. And if you're one of these people that does wager on the NFL, I think that you ought to grab that net rest breakdown and really study it, because it really does illustrate that week after week in the NFL, there's oftentimes a team that has an advantage on another team. And how many times do you wager on games in the NFL and never really take that rest advantage into much of an account? You probably should. And because there were a couple games that I saw where the 49ers were on the wrong end of the rest, and I forget exactly what matchup it was, but there's some matchup that they have this year where they're coming off of a short week on the road on the other side of the country, I believe, or at least, middle of the country. And then they play a team that's been off for like 13 days. and I forget which team it is, but I mean, that's going to be a tough game to win. So that's one of them. Greg is con. We're talking about Cynthia Freeland earlier. He throws in a Cynthia is hot. Nice. Now we're ogling poor Cynthia Freeland, but she does a really, really good job. MG says, Pig in a Pickle. Yes, the title sponsor of the Krueg Show, Pig in a Pickle. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. We got Joey Nichols, who says, Goff might regress, but if he plays at the level he did last year, the Lions will be damn good. I could see that. I could absolutely see that. I think I almost don't include the Lions as a surprise pick because they were 9-8 last year. I think they're kind of a chic pick to be, a real top tier team. And I like what they're doing personnel wise. And they hired John Dorsey as a consultant. John Dorsey knows personnel well. To me, it's not an accident that John Dorsey goes to Cleveland and all of a sudden Cleveland built up their talent base. John Dorsey shows up in Detroit. Suddenly they're, making a number of interesting and profitable selections. The guys who know personnel. And, sometimes they're not the GM. Sometimes they're now in consultant roles. Guys like Scott McCloughan, guys like John Dorsey, really, really knowledgeable personnel guys. And I always keep track of where these guys are because wherever those guys are, good players tend to kind of follow. And, I'll tell you, if I owned a team, I might not make Scott McCloughan my general manager, but I absolutely would hire him as a consultant. And I'd want to know, to see exactly who he likes in a particular draft. Scott, by the way, a couple of years ago, really liked Talanoa Hufanga, and he said so right after the draft. And Hufanga was a 6th-round pick. This year, Scott's big, the article that Matt Barrows wrote in The Athletic on the Niners, Scott was a big fan of Jalen Graham. And I'll say this from being at practice, Jalen Graham's legit. He looks terrific. So McCloughan knows what he's talking about. McCloughan knows personnel. You can make an argument that the team that Jim Harbaugh went to the Super Bowl with in New Orleans against the Ravens, that was McCloughan's team. I know Trent Baalke was the general manager for a few of those years as well, but McCloughan built the lot of the core that made up that Super Bowl team that Harbaugh got to New Orleans against Baltimore. And in the Harbaugh Bowl, let's see, we got a couple interesting ones here. What the hell? Let's see. We got this one from Joey Nichols. He says the gambling thing's becoming a major issue in the NFL. Yeah, there is no question. And I think I described it well. You've got billions being bet on this sport, tons of people interested, and you have players, a workforce that, the quarterbacks make a lot of money, but the guys on the lower end of the tier don't make a lot of money. And, they're susceptible to the influences of gamblers and also the influence of just needing money. That creates a dynamic that makes the NFL, I hope it makes the NFL vigilant about policing this, because at the end of the day, all we really have is that this thing's on the level. If it's not on the level, or if there's ever proof that there were a bunch of games fixed, gambling is a major component of the NFL's popularity. It's appointment television, it's violence, it's athleticism, but gambling is right there. It's right there. It's one of the major components of why this sport is so popular. And people gamble on it on all kinds of levels. They gamble hardcore, big money on it. Then there's people that gamble a little bit on it. And then there's people who play fantasy. And it's all forms of gambling. And if the thing is not on the level, man, that goes away. That you want to see a sport do damage to itself, just have 4 or 5 people out there, say that these games aren't on the level and that, there's a fix in, and suddenly, people will say, I don't watch that anymore. It's all fixed. It's wrestling. Now, that's It's a major, major problem as far as image going forward for the NFL. MG says Steve Wilkes has proven the defense will be a bright spot. Very impressed by Steve Wilkes. No question. Greg is Khan says, I thought the Feliciano signing was also very underrated. I agree. Ian Sharp says, not much talk about Feliciano. I think Feliciano might be able to beat out Brendel for that starting center spot. A couple people have put this in the chat that I thought was kind of questionable. Spidey saying these polls kind of getting sus. What polls are you talking about? I mean, seriously, somebody else asked, threw that in there as well. What's up with these polls? Yeah, well, listen to this one. Trox says, Krug, you trying to sell my data with all the polls? I have no idea what this is even in reference to. None. I have no idea what you're talking about. Please, if you have more information, let me know. I have no idea. I'm not putting out any polls. My son's not putting out any polls. I mean, we may have put a poll out in the last month, one, but it's not like I have no idea what that's in reference to. So please let me know. Gregus says, I'm worried about Jake Brendel when he's facing Mozzie Smith and Jordan Davis. I am as well. I brought that up to, I think, Grant the other day, that, Brendel's like 285, 295, somewhere in there. And Feliciano's like 315, 320, and really broad and really strong. So, and Mozzie Smith, by the way, was a little bit of a projection by Dallas, but he is one of the freakiest athletes the league, in the middle of the line that the league has. And now he's in Dallas. And that is, if he fulfills the massive amounts of potential that he has, the Cowboys could be a whole lot better this year. And one other thought on, Al said his breakout team or surprise team was Carolina. I kind of agree with Al on that one. Wait, El Camilo Dorado says, yeah. Says, yep, today poll was crazy. What? SMH says, log into your show, Larry. There's a poll right now. I have no idea. I'll have to check that out. I'll say this. I didn't put it up there. I'll have to check with Len on that. Maybe he put out a poll question. I have no knowledge of any poll question being out. All right, let me ask you this, guys. What is today's poll question? Because I don't know. Nobody told me about it. That makes us look bad. I'll go check that out. And as far as if anybody put a poll out that I got to get my arms around that one because I had no idea. He says, yeah, Camilo Dorado says, yep, the poll today was crazy. I don't know. Oh, somebody said, where are you watching an age range? Is that possible that's coming from YouTube? I didn't put that out. Bay Area Baller says, I see no problem with the poll. I just don't know about it. I have no idea what you guys are talking about. So I'll ask. And if somebody is putting a poll question out, someone said it's a demographic poll. Is it possible that it's being put out by YouTube? Because I haven't put that out. And nobody's reference. My son usually clears everything with me before he does anything on the channel. And Len usually clears everything with me before he puts anything out on the channel. So SMH says the other poll was asking where we are watching the stream from, at work, etc. I mean, Eric says you don't have to answer the poll. Yeah, but if I hear what you're saying, though. If you're annoyed by some poll or if you feel like you're being tracked or something, I'll say this. M. Patel says, what's next? Your sexual orientation? Yeah, I'll say this. I know nothing about it. And if it's coming from my guys, it will end. If it's coming from YouTube, it may not end, but I'll look into it. So thank you for that, by the way. Thank you for that. Because this is literally the first I've heard about it, and I probably should know. Anyway. But thanks for everybody for supporting the channel. That's going to do it for us for today on the live stream. We'll be doing more streams probably later today, so check that out. Have a great Thursday. Enjoy the weather wherever you're at. We're getting ready for training camp, and I hope you guys understand where we're at on this quarterback thing, I think we now are starting to get a real look at this, is that it sounds like, and this is guessing. I'm just guessing. I have no sources. I haven't been to the Niner complex in a week or two, but I'm guessing that the Breer, the Schefter, the Rappaports, these national guys are getting whispers that from the team or from somebody that Trey is incredibly raw, and that that's why that, he might be behind Darnold. Because, guys, I've been at every practice that they've allowed the media to, and I think I know what I'm talking about. And I would sit there. If you said to me, what do you think of what you're watching? I would say Brandon Allen's had a couple days where I thought, man, this guy's pretty damn good. But he's also had a couple days where I thought he wasn't very good. I mean, there was one day I think he maybe completed one pass. As far as Darnold takes more shots down the field than Trey, but he looks very comparable to Trey. Trey, to me, takes fewer shots down the field, but as I said, they look very comparable. So, to me, if you said Brock's number one, of course, to me, that's a no-brainer. But as far as number two, I would say there wouldn't be a number two, that there would be just like, we're going to roll the balls out in training camp. We're going to give Sam some reps with the ones. We're going to give Trey some reps with the ones, and check back in 10 days. That's what my eyes tell me. Now, there may be a reality that is being whispered to these national insiders that Trey's really raw, and that wouldn't, guys, I think we need to put our arms around it, that whether, you love Trey or love Brock or love Darnold or whatever, when you look at how little football Trey Lance has played since high school and what level he was at, it's not crazy talk to think that he might be really, really raw, and that some people in the know could be whispering that to these national guys. What I think has to end, what has to absolutely end, is this polarization of the fan base, and this, if somebody's a Brock Purdy fan, you're not there's Niner fans who are opposed to him. Let's look at this for what it is. Brock has played really well. Let's not bang on Brock because you're frustrated that Trey's not progressing or getting the reps that you think he deserves. It doesn't have anything to do with Brock. That's why these guys get along so well, because there's mutual respect there. Brock respects Trey. Trey respects Brock. The room is good. You know what I mean? These guys are good with each other. And it's like, no, it's not Trey's fault that he's raw, and it's not Trey's fault that they drafted him 3rd overall, and it's not Brock's fault that Trey was drafted 3rd overall. So, all these guys are trying to do is improve and play good football. That's it. So this whole good versus evil, and if you say that, Trey's raw, you've got this hidden agenda and it's angry and anti. It may be for some people, but it ain't for me. And if you're pro Brock, it's not like you're like, oh my God. The people that are pro Brock are just like, they're pro Niners, and the Niners did nothing but win with Brock. So I think we need to dial down the vitriol, dial down. I mean, and by the way, don't blame the content creators for covering this story. This is the story. This is the story. We're going to talk about it. This whole bemoaning of, oh my God, they won't shut up about the quarterbacks, because it's absolutely probably one of the top 2, 3, or 4 NFL stories, regardless of team. The 49ers are the only Super Bowl contender who have question marks at the quarterback position. It's the biggest, most popular sport in America. The Niners are an iconic franchise who are one of the Super Bowl contenders, and it's the quarterback position. It would be negligence not to cover it. So this whole I'm so tired of it. I'm tired of it too. I want some answers. But to say that we haven't advanced this story one bit in the off season, or to just sit there and, say nothing's changed. No. Things have changed. Things have changed. Joey Nichols says, I think Lombardi has the most level-headed take on the situation at the moment. Well, he's just saying nothing's changed, but things have changed. And they absolutely have changed. This is not the same story as it was. We're starting to get the indications from these insiders that these whispers are not about nothing. And it's not like, the 49, I mean, Dave's take was, hey, the 49ers knew that Trey was raw. Okay, but there's levels of it. He's now been in the system for a number of years. Raw is one thing. This is not raw. This is super raw. Do you see what I'm saying? There's a difference. He's had a redshirt year and an injury year. You know what I mean? I love Dave. Dave's a good guy, but I think it's a little disingenuous, to be totally honest. And I would say it to his face, to say nothing's changed. No, things have changed. Things have absolutely changed. They brought in Sam Darnold for a reason. They brought in Brandon Allen for a reason. This Trey thing, it could go any direction. He could be on this roster and they could take a super long range view. Trey says he wants to be here long term. Maybe the Niners will say, you know what, he ain't going anywhere, but his cap number is going up. And what Al said is true. I mean, I asked the question, how long will the Niners pay a top cap dollar figure for a quarterback that sits number 3 on the depth chart? And will they see it through to completion? I personally think he's going to get there, but I think it might take a year, might take another year, maybe another 2 years. And that's been my stance. I mean, I have been remarkably consistent on this stance. I said that I really believe both guys are franchise quarterbacks and that Brock's ready to play now. And that's why the Niners are all in on Brock, because his timeline fits with their timeline. But I think Trey's a franchise quarterback too. I really do. But it's probably not right now. And the question is, can he get there without playing? And then how does he develop without playing? The Niners are in a Super Bowl contender. So they can't really play this super raw quarterback who they believe is going to make a lot of mistakes. And maybe that's a false assumption. Maybe he's improved dramatically and we're going to see it this July. But this idea that nothing's changed, no, things have changed. Things have absolutely changed. If things hadn't changed from the beginning, then there would be no Sam Darnold. There would be no Brandon Allen. And there definitely wouldn't be both. They both would not be sitting here if Trey were progressing to the point where he could absolutely start games. They are hedging big time by picking up 2 veteran quarterbacks while they already have Lance and Purdy. So Paul says, what age range are you in? I got to think that's from YouTube. Yeah, Paul says, Krug, there's a poll over the chat asking about age range. All right. Well, hey, all I'll say is this. I know nothing of it. I will definitely, as soon as I hang this up, we finish the stream, I will make a couple phone calls. I will find out if we are authoring these polls or if it's a YouTube thing. And if it's a YouTube thing, it may not be able to be changed. Spidey says it's a YouTube thing. He says it's from YouTube if it's creeper questions. Well, I mean, there's always the possibility that my guys are asking these questions, but you know what? I don't. Oh, wait a second here. Now Len's saying he put the poll up. All right. Well, today is the last day for the poll. Okay. That's it. We don't need polls. All right. And if people don't like them, why are we putting them up? Paul says the poll shows up if you are on a phone. Yeah. Well, I'll ask my guy why we're putting it up, but it won't be up anymore after today. And I apologize for those of you who are turned off by the polls. But it sounds like talking to my guy Len here that he put it up there. All right. I got to go talk to him. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you later on the Krueg Show. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to